Okay. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I am Elizabeth Kilmer and I'll be kind of hosting our chat tonight, and we'll be talking about the exhibition Alphonse Mucha, Master of Art Nouveau, Selections from the Dewan Collection. But before we get started, I'd like to thank our generous sponsors who helped make this exhibition possible. Special thank you to the support of Hashimoto Contemporary Gallery and the numerous donors to the FWMoA Annual Fund. Joining me this evening is Heather MacGregor, Administrative Director for the Conservation Center in Chicago, Illinois. She's a close friend of mine and a fellow 19th century art history enthusiast. Heather, before we get started, can you tell our viewers a little about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I am currently located in Chicago. I initially moved here to go to undergrad, and that's where I started studying art history and kind of quickly realized that I was obsessed with 19th century culture and art, and then went on to grad program in London, which is of course where I met you, and then continued 19th century study there, and then kind of gone through gallery spaces and museum and auction house work, and now I work in the Conservation Center.
All right. And I don't have a clear answer for this myself, but do you remember when you first started to be like, oh, Mucha, that his work is amazing. I love everything he does.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if there was one specific moment, but definitely all through school and learning about art, I've kind of always been fascinated at how it's just beautiful. Like, just looks, it's so easy to look at, and there is meaning, and there are all of these things behind it. So I think in college, probably study is where you first find out, but you've probably seen most Mucha things, growing up your whole life. It's still in culture, which is what's kind of awesome about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it's in college where you start to learn about more Art Nouveau artists besides just Toulouse-Lautrec, who is also wonderful with his artwork. But I remember like Mucha, it's just so, I feel like, extra beautiful with all of his swirls and tendrils, which we will get into. And you're right, there is a lot more meaning behind it besides just being pretty, which I feel like a lot of people just kind of think about Art Nouveau. It's like, oh, it's the really pretty swirly stuff. You have the cool metropolitan subway entryways in Paris, but there's so much more to that, as we are going to see this evening. So let me get our PowerPoint pulled up. So here we have Mucha, and what a lot of people don't know about Mucha is that he had a very varied career. He didn't just do his poster designs that he is so well known for today, but he also did numerous book illustrations, jewelry, decorative panels, theater design. He was a prolific man of many talents. And from 1895 to 1910, he was one of the premier artists in Europe. He was in high demand everywhere, especially in Paris and also in America as well, because he spent large chunks of time here looking for patrons, and he was everywhere. He was on the sides of biscuit boxes that we'll see in a little bit. And with Mucha, I think you can make the strong argument that it was kind of his work that started like Art Nouveau when he started doing posters. He did one for the actress Sarah Bernhardt for her play Gizmonda, and that was in 1895. And it was at that point when people were like, oh, I love this new style Mucha, that it was deemed at first, and then kind of has become what we would call Art Nouveau. And he was everywhere, and you can see these decorative panels that he had, and some of them are very small, some of them are very intimate, and some of them are very large. And what's interesting to note is with Art Nouveau, much like with the arts and crafts movement in England and aestheticism, they're breaking down what we would kind of call high or low art. Everything in Art Nouveau was supposed to be beautiful. You're supposed to surround yourself with beauty. And that was really as a reaction to the Industrial Revolution and cheaply manufactured goods. Things just weren't as pretty as they were anymore. And Art Nouveau in general is known for its very curling tendrils and big swaths of floral design. And it dates back to the Rococo and Celtic imagery with floral designs and medieval manuscripts. And we're going to see these things used time and time again in these posters. So for those of you who weren't aware of Art Nouveau, now we have a little bit of background. And Heather, do you have anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I think kind of along the lines of what you were saying, Mucha was kind of everywhere, and the World's Fair and everything at the time when the world was kind of rapidly expanding and things were becoming global and commercial and all of these huge changes are happening. He's kind of there everywhere through it all, through making posters and jewelry and all sorts of different things. Like, there he is.
And like you said, a lot of people have probably grown up seeing images of Mucha and you don't know.
Never even realized, yeah.
So the first specific piece we are going to look at today is Zodiac. And we're all familiar with something about a Zodiac, whether it be the Zodiac serial killer, as some people are obsessed with, or with like astrology and star signs. But here, I think it's a very interesting piece to look at because it's an example of something that Mucha created that was then repurposed for a different meaning. So it was a calendar and then it became a decorative panel, and now we have it as art. I mean, it's just interesting to see.
Yeah, it's wild to like look at all the detail. I'm always like just shocked kind of how much he gets in, all of the different elements, and all of them bring either meaning or decoration. It's just, there's so much there, but it looks so clean and beautiful. He's just such a master.
He is. And I think we see a big influence of another 19th century fascination, which was like symbolism and mysticism, because we have this overt symbolism of signs, and we see all of the different zodiac symbols that have been not only represented with their astrological sign, but then his artistic take on them as well. And they're very stylized within Art Nouveau. And then we have this embodiment of the entire zodiac in the middle, and it's almost as if the signs around her are a halo. So you can see how mysticism was just interwoven into so many different aspects of the 19th century, which we normally think of as buttoned up, closed off, but they were into all of this.
Yeah, all of these crazy ideas kind of coming through. And
another piece that we have that touches on symbolism and mysticism is reverie or daydream. So Heather, I'm going to let you talk about this one first, so I don't just keep going.
Sure. I think with this one too, kind of talking about how he gained access to the public through periodicals and magazines, kind of the case here. Another thing kind of I love about this one is the kind of direct stare. It invites you in, you look through the whole piece. The circle around her again kind of brings you through, like it just all flows through, and you still have the meaning she's clearly reading, and she kind of pulls you into her daydream, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, it is. And especially when we think about how often we all daydream throughout the day. And here in this decorative panel, we see the embodiment of reading something and then becoming lost in a subsequent thought beyond that. And she makes being relaxed and dreamy look so inviting.
Yeah. And it seems so simple, just like it just took the decorative elements behind her and everything. It really does bring you in.
It does. So we were talking about how he always gets so much detail into his work. And what's great about the works we have in the Dewan collection is we have a number of different opportunities where the collectors have collected not only the finished product, but they have one of the working drafts as well. And one of my favorites in the exhibition is Le Rubis or Ruby, which was part of Mucha's 4-part semi-precious stones series. And we can really see here how he worked through all of his compositional elements. And it's kind of hard to see in this PowerPoint, but he has a grid covering all of the working draft. So that's how he would have then translated it to the lithography stone. So he makes sure everything is in place, nothing gets wonky. And I think it's really fun just looking between the two of them, because we have them hung together in the gallery to see what Mucha added or took away.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And just to see, like, his compositions do all seem so perfect. So to see him kind of planning it out where everything will go, what ends up getting kind of taken out in the final product and what stays, the differences in like clothing, even everything is completely thought out.
Yes. And especially with this one, I think what jumps out to me the most are the two little figures that are on her shoulders. And it looks like they would have maybe been holding large rubies, but I don't know because it wasn't finished. And instead they were taken out and we have this big Mucha-esque circle behind her, like so many of his ladies have. It almost reminds me of how we mentioned how Art Nouveau has influences of like medieval manuscripts. I feel like he's almost alluding to like saintly halos with his decorative figures. Yeah. I think I almost like the working draft composition a little bit more.
Yeah, it's just so interesting. You could look at it forever and notice little things.
Mm-hmm. And it's just black and white. It's not even in not even in his colors.
Yeah, the color in the ruby is beautiful and stunning too. It's manages to be like bright but muted. It's perfect balance. But the black and white, yeah, you get to see every fine line.
Mm-hmm. And what I think is interesting to note in this one, and we'll see it in his other compositions as well, is in the late 19th century, I feel like a lot of ad agencies were representing women with the tight lacing, with the itty bitty little waists that no one could ever get to. But I feel like Mucha's women look like they're made like with real like flesh on them. And I feel like
with the flowing garments too.
Yes. And I feel like maybe that's why they've been so enduring for so long and not.
Yeah, they don't feel as dated. Yeah.
They just invite you in and you want to stay. So the next piece is Gizmonda. And this, I feel like we could argue, was really the catalyst for his career being successful. What would you say?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the partnership with Sarah Bernhardt, who's in herself this huge celebrity. I think it's fair to say.
And what I learned in like preparing for this exhibition and just getting all the text together for it and just reading what we were sent, I didn't know that he had a 6-year contract with Sarah Bernhardt where he did not only her posters, but he designed jewelry for her. He did all of her theater design and her costume development. And it was just, he was making all of these other posters at the same time.
Yeah, I recently was reading about this too. I was kind of fascinated to learn kind of her savvy as a businesswoman. She would even like hold back certain editions of the poster or like sell them at certain times and kind of like managed her own career that way and worked so closely with Mucha and kind of developed a brand for herself, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, I didn't know that she held back the different editions of the posters, and I feel like that was very ahead of her time to be doing that, especially since so many of these Art Nouveau era posters we have because people just pulled them from the walls before the glue was dry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, and what I think was interesting about Sarah as well was that, I mean, she ran her own theater, and at a time when women as a whole really weren't supposed to be on the stage. And she not only ran her theater, was the star, but she would also play male roles like Hamlet, and she got rave reviews. And she just,
Yeah,
I feel like
she
she
did it all.
went outside of time.
Oh, yeah.
So something really great about this, much like with Ruby, we have two different trial proofs that Mucha did for this while he was trying to figure out his colors. So we have a red trial proof and we have a blue trial proof, and then we see here in the final piece that it looks like he ended up going with a very different shade of blue altogether for his baseline. And I think it's so fascinating being able to see the steps that artists took while they were figuring it out.
Yeah, I love that this is part of the exhibition. It's so cool to see. You kind of get not only an idea of his process, but of the printmaking process in general, like how layered it is, where each color comes in, printing the plate over and over and over again. It's just a fascinating process, and you get to see it like really clearly spelled out. It's just so cool.
And something that we can't really capture on this PowerPoint is how big these Gizmonda posters are. They're close to like 8 feet tall, and they feel even bigger with their frames. And standing in front of them, you feel like you're almost in front of a stained glass window in a cathedral. And they are just massive. And they pull you in, and then all the detail that you can only really see when you're close, like the front of Sarah's robes in this are just, you can feel the embroidery that she would have had on the front of that. It's just so fascinating.
Yeah, it's amazing the like textural qualities he gets and the different like even in elements that are more flat and standard to a poster, there's all of this layering in the background and on the garments and in the text. It's just so beautiful.
And then when you think about how he would have been printing on lithography stones, and to be able to have posters this large, he had to have stones this big or bigger so that they wouldn't have run off the side. And then each color is its own stone. It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, the amount of planning going into it is pretty astonishing.
And I'm sure he had help at the printing press, because there's no way.
I would hope so.
But another thing that I think is important to see in these posters is we really start to see how Mucha was able to bring in a narrative element to just one image for the poster. So I learned that Gizmonda, because I had never heard of the play before the exhibition came. She plays the title role of Gizmonda, and she's the widowed Duchess of Athens, and she has an advisor named Zachariah who plans to overthrow her, and she ends up killing him to keep her money and her land and her power. And while we have Sarah looking very regal, holding her palm frond, just underneath her robes, I don't know if my cursor shows up for everyone, but we have like a skulking figure down here underneath her plinth who's just crawled underneath. And I feel like that would be Zachariah, because he's not only skulking and in shadow, and he also has an ugly face, which in symbolism we know that means he's evil. But she's also standing triumphant on top of him.
Yeah, absolutely. And she looks so self-possessed. You get such a good sense of her character just from this single image.
Mm-hmm. I'm getting very strong, like early Lady Macbeth vibes before she her mind.
Yeah, definitely.
So another poster for Sarah Bernhardt that we have in the exhibition that really shows Mucha's ability to show a narrative is the Samaritan, that alludes to the biblical story of a woman from Samaria who encounters Christ at a well and offers him water and converts to Christianity and then encourages her countrymen to do. But just looking at it without even knowing the story of the Samaritan, I feel like you can kind of tell where this is going to be taking place.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many visual clues, even the way he alters fonts to kind of give hints. Obviously, like the pictorial, the image has so many little hints in there too. Just everything, he plays with every aspect of the image.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we have Sarah Bernhardt, which her name was always front and center with all of her posts.
Yeah, of course.
Mine would have been too. We have Sarah Bernhardt in her Mucha halo, and underneath her we have the Hebrew lettering, and then what I think is great is we see Mucha's, what I think of as the Mucha lady hair that just takes you throughout the entire composition. She takes you down and into her jug, which she would have had for her water, and it's so simple, but the longer you look at it, I feel like you just see how much he does.
Yeah, it's amazing. There are so many elements and so much going on, and you can read through the whole thing. But it never looks busy or confusing, or it's never too much. It's the perfect advertisement. And you see why he was called back to do ads time and time again, because you do just want to look at it, and it is so clear and precise.
Yes, I totally agree. And like how you're talking about, this is why he did the ads, because you keep coming back to them. I think that ties perfectly into this ad, because
yeah,
it's selling bicycles, but is that really what he's selling?
Yeah, I think it makes kind of anybody want to buy a bike, and it's kind of pared down. Like he gets straight to the point with this one. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of, the whiplash curves and tendrils and everything that we see kind of as a decorative element. Like it's just straight into the hair becomes the whiplash curve. Like the excess line is eliminated. You see it in the clothing. She's front and center. He tells you exactly what he's advertising at the top, and there it is.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. We have our bike, but what we see more than the bike is our lady on the bike, who she's in comfortable clothing so she can quickly ride. And we know that she's been flying on her bike because her hair is just
blown in the wind.
Blown in the wind like no other hair has ever been. And it's like he is telling you, if you get one of these bicycles, if you're a lady, you'll have as good of a time as she is. And if you're a man, you can go on a ride with her.
Yeah, makes you want to buy a bike, I guess.
It doesn't help that it's bike weather, so I want to go on a bike ride.
Yeah, I know. I could go for that right now.
And this is another one where I feel like he is selling more of an experience than the actual product.
Yeah, for sure. Just it's all in her face. It just looks like she's having the best time in the world. Like this is the best product, no matter what it is.
I know. And especially because it's for a cigarette paper. It's not even for a specific brand of tobacco. This is just what you would have been rolling your tobacco in the late 19th century. And as before, her hair becomes the whiplash curls that are then mirrored in the different corners of the outer frame of the composition. And she looks like she's the ultimate femme fatale in ecstasy because of this amazing cigarette paper.
Yeah, I love the hair in this one. It's just the most beautiful decorative element. And it kind of reminds me of like brass inlay or furniture. Like it does harken back to kind of how there is no division anymore between what's decorative and what's fine art and high and low. You can make furniture, you can make jewelry, you can make a poster, and it's all using the same stylistic elements, and it's all beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it reminds me very much of like buhl marquetry. The bottom hair feel like it should be gold or brass and against
Yeah, exactly.
some black lacquered wood.
Yeah, which I guess kind of the background kind of reinforces that too.
Yeah. And as intricate as her hair is and the smoke tendrils, I feel like this is also him being very kind of subtle in the background because you have
Yeah.
a big job cigarette paper, but then in the background you have it repeated very stylistically with the little like monogram behind it. But then we still have our Mucha halo, but it's part of the word this time. It's not this separate decorative element.
Yeah, I love the way the text is integrated. And it's, yeah, like you said, so part of this style.
And as you were mentioning, there's not a difference between the high art and low art anymore. It's all beautiful. Oh, I forgot a piece. I'll get back to that for the next one. But we have another advertisement here for Flirt Biscuits. And again, I feel like he is selling flirting as opposed to this biscuit.
Yeah, what a like perfect play on the word.
Mm-hmm. And it makes me wonder, like I'm sure that Le Fèvre Utile, the biscuit company, had like an idea of that they wanted to have a playful name for their biscuit to appeal to the younger flirtatious people or flirtatious crowd. But I would also like to know how much Mucha's creative input led to them choosing the name Flirt.
Yeah, that would be fascinating because it's definitely, I mean, it's the perfect advertisement for it. And like, it's not just, you know, a picture of a biscuit, which I feel like would be the tendency at the time to just show the product. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's just, it really does invite you in. The clothing kind of integrates into the plants and the muted tones. And then the white of their like collars pops with the name, the font, and everything. It's just, it brings you into that scene so much.
It does, and it's almost like if you enjoy Flirt Biscuits, you are the same as this sophisticated couple who looks like they've just come from either a multi-course meal or more likely a night at the theater with the way that he's dressed with his coat and tails.
Yeah, I think probably why he's so good at what he does and so successful. Like at the time, with things becoming more commercial and selling products that you can buy at a department store, and you know all of these changes happening in the world, he's able to sell kind of the product, but draw you in with the lifestyle and the idea. And he does it so elegantly.
He does. He's selling you a narrative, especially with this one where we have the two people, and that narrative makes you want to buy the product. Yeah, I totally agree. So the piece that I thought we were going to next that I was introducing last time was the no difference between high art and low art is this just literal biscuit box that we have that's been flattened out for the exhibition. Now this is a lithograph just like everything else, but it's very small. It's only about this big. And so that's why this lady on top is upside down because the box would have been folded down into like a little triangle type shape. But this is just a biscuit box. All it did was hold biscuits. And it is so intricate and elegant and detailed. We would never find this today.
No, yeah, it's so beautiful. Kind of like brings you into this world where you're the sophisticated person. It's like traveling, but it's on a biscuit box.
It is. And he has these very bold lines breaking up each panel so that no matter what side of the box you're looking at, you're going on a different journey. We have what looks like a peasant woman down here, and she's somewhere in Europe. I don't know where. Probably somewhere in Italy since we're in Venice, it looks like here. She almost looks like she would be the front of the box and she's dreaming of being in Venice on a gondola with a lyre, and then after she's sang her songs by the canal, she'll just go and lounge on
Yeah.
the pond.
Yeah. And then do we have like Vesuvius in the background? It's hard to tell with it flipped upside down, but it's just like all of these images of Italy and, it makes you want to go there and have a biscuit.
We'll call it Vesuvius since the rest looks like Italy. It looks like this could be like a Colosseum or something.
Yeah. Got the river flowing.
Yeah. And I just like how I feel like this is one of the few times we see a Mucha lady who's not so excessively sensuous. She looks much more ho-hum, just sitting there with her laundry and dreaming about our other usual Mucha women, wanting to be them. So the last work that we'll talk about, I think, is very interesting because it's so different from a lot of the other pieces we have in this exhibition. And so this one, it's the Slav Epic, and this became like Mucha's passion project in the latter half of his career, for those of you who are not aware. It ended up being a series of 20 paintings that illustrated key moments in Slavic history, starting with the ancient times of the native individuals and tribes that lived in the area, all the way through to the then modern and contemporary time of the 1920s. And it covered everything from the original kingdoms that were in the area to when the Holy Roman Empire took over, to when the Slovakian people were then Germanized by the Habsburgs and the Austria-Hungary Empire, to when they were then finally getting their freedom after World War I. And so it's become a very personal project to Mucha, as he was born in the area of then Czechoslovakia, now the Czech Republic. And it's really him celebrating where he is coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, too, it's the perfect project for him kind of as a storyteller and employing symbolism, because the whole project just gets to be so full of symbols and gets to tell all of these stories throughout time. So I feel like it makes sense that it was his passion project and that he spent decades working on it.
And not only did he spend decades working on it, he spent part of those decades traveling to America to find patrons to pay for it, because he couldn't pay for all of these tiny paintings that people didn't necessarily want.
A shift from advertising to your passion project, I guess, needs some funding.
Yes. I mean, he eventually did find a patron who paid for it all. But I think it's also interesting to note that this epic was finished over 10 years after Art Nouveau was no longer popular. Because with the onset of World War I, as you know, people didn't like Art Nouveau anymore. I mean, you had the horrors of the war. It seemed old-fashioned. It was too over the top, much like Rococo was seen by neoclassicism as well. Like, it was just too much, too many flowers, too many swirls. But we can see that Mucha is still working in Le Style Mucha, even later.
Yeah, it's so evident that it's him still. Like, he does, I guess there's kind of updating of certain symbols in the background and kind of shift to almost a deco look. The coloring, and it gets rid of some of the whiplash curves, but the line is still important. It's still him. It's still his work.
We still have a lady with impossibly perfect hair, and
right.
That's how you say the whiplash isn't so whiplashy. The smoke that's coming up out of that incense burner, I feel like, has baby whiplashes, and it's just
right. He's finding ways to incorporate lines still, which I feel is so key in Art Nouveau, finding ways to move lines through the piece.
And something that I thought was interesting in reading about this piece, we only have one of the 20 in the exhibition. We don't have all 20. I know the originals are currently in Prague, and they're trying to figure out who truly owns them and where they should be displayed. but this one, I mean, we have our lady in the front who is like embodying like Bohemia and the Slavic nationalism. But then the figure in the back, you'll notice that it's one head with three faces, and that is the not Greek, no, the Slav god of past, present, and future, and his name is Svantavit. I think I said that correctly. But like you said, we see the symbolism and the mysticism coming through with the emphasis on Slavic mythology that most people would not know. The first thought would probably be Janus, the god, the two-faced god in
right
mythology, but this guy has three faces.
Yeah, and that he chose the past, present, and future, the symbol to invite you to his opening of his exhibition that's showing this entire history and what he's been doing the past 20 years or so. The symbols are kind of everywhere, and it's perfect.
Yeah, he's looking to his country's past, he's in the present, and he's looking forward to what I'm sure he dreamed of being, a rich Slavic future.
Yeah.
So I want to see if we have any questions from Facebook before we keep going. We do not today. Do you have anything else you would like to add, Heather?
No, I don't think so. Just thank you for inviting me to do this. This was really fun. It's always nice to look at Mucha and talk about art. So
no, if we have another opportunity, I will definitely ask you, because I thoroughly enjoyed tonight too. Thank you for joining us, and thank you everyone else for coming out today as well. All right, goodbye everybody.
Goodbye.